Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes Recap.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and we're coming to you today with our recap of Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 2. This one's called Home.
A little bit violent early in this one. This is definitely a dark episode.
There's a lot of killing and a lot of upsets again. I mean, I don't want to jump too far into it, but well, we kill some people and we get some people back. So, on the balance, maybe it's not as violent.
I think this was recorded as a seven down plus one, so a total of 6 net characters have swapped places.
Well, the baby was new too. We have to have a +1 for the baby, right?
That is true. Yeah.
That was
the one of the few that actually kind of made me feel gross.
It did. I mean, we're used to Ramsay being a nasty booger, but maybe I'm glad to hear it's not just because I have kids, but I think partly because I have kids, I was just like, dude, really?
Well, he like straight up went biblical with it.
It was not. Biblical's where you dash their head against the stone, Tony, which I was worried I was gonna see infant head pieces flying out while he just had this baby by the ankle and just wailed it against a rock or a wall somewhere, like the
He's too practical
guy.
For that. Remember, he's got to feed the dogs. Let's frame the scene real quick. Should we talk about this chronologically and go through the whole episode?
I made notes today, Tony. I made notes so I have all the scenes written down. So for getting ahead of ourselves, the story opens with Bran. Actually, we haven't seen an entire season.
Yeah, he's gotten way older.
Which I thought was really clever. I thought that they sort of let us forget what he looked like so that they could deal with the aging thing. From a show-running perspective, it helps us to sort of digest the fact that, yeah, okay, he's not a little kid anymore. And B, it gives us a real understanding that a lot has happened to him. He has learned a bunch of stuff. So throwing us into him going into his family's past through some kind of weird mind warp thing, who knows exactly how that works.
Through the three-eyed raven, which I'd completely forgot that they cast Max von Sydow as
I've heard Cedow.
They actually cast him as the three-eyed raven. I had completely forgotten about that. For people who don't know, he's been in everything from The Exorcist, Minority Report, the most recent Star Wars. He's all over the place. Really
good actor. And it also, they drop in some interesting exposition there. We find out a little bit about, what is her name? The one who got the whole war set off.
Lyanna.
Is that her? That's her, right?
Yeah, they actually brought her in. This is the first time in the flesh we've seen anything with Lyanna.
And so she's the whole reason that basically Westeros is the way it is. She's the reason that everything started out the way it started out, where
the reason for Robert's rebellion in the War of the Five Kings.
Yes, and potentially maybe a speculative spoiler, possibly she's the mother of Jon Snow.
Yeah, that's been something that's been discussed for a while, and there's more and more people that are thinking that he could be the bastard son of a Targaryen and Lyanna, affair that happened. There's a lot of speculation there. I'm sure a lot of the people that are listening to this show are well versed in it, but give a quick review of what people are saying could be happening.
Okay, so for those of you who don't, the whole war that happened before the show even started, the war of I forget what it was called.
I think they just call it Robert's Rebellion.
But she gets carried away by one of the Targaryens, one of the sort of not weird incesty Targaryens. And
is it Rhaegar?
I think it is Rhaegar, yes. She's carried away by Rhaegar Targaryen, and Robert and Ned have it painted as her being forcefully stolen away and basically raped, and, they're not cool with it. Robert's in love with her, so he's going to get her back. So that's the official history as it is told in the world currently. However, there is an alternate interpretation that some people speculate that Rhaegar and Lyanna were actually in love, and Rhaegar carried her away, not as a rape thing, but just they were eloping together, and Robert couldn't take it, and when he found her, she was pregnant or had given birth to Rhaegar's child, and that's where Jon Snow comes from, because Lyanna gives Jon Snow to Ned and says, don't tell Robert that it's Rhaegar's son, because if you do, he'll want to kill him. So, again, all fan theory, but it fits with a lot of stuff that they've established in the books, and I think they're starting to establish in the show.
Yeah, it seems like they're moving that way, and we'll cover some of that evidence here in a little bit. But it's basically, it's under the idea that you really wouldn't get Ned to break his chest and everything and have like a son or a bastard son. So it's a lot more likely that something like that happened, according to some people, than he just got freaky in King's Landing.
Yeah, and it really, if you read the books at all, there's just like the very first chapter has a lot of sort of hints at that. Where if you're just reading it, it doesn't matter too much, but once you have that theory in mind, you go back, you're like, oh yeah, they do kind of lean kind of heavy on him. The way things are worded and some stuff that he thinks, the flashback he has to Lyanna dying and how she tells him, not to tell anybody. Like it's not exactly spelled out, but it sure does fit with everything that seems to be laid down in the books. And again, they're bringing her into the show. I can't imagine nothing in this show, especially this season, has seemed like, we'll just throw that in there. It's very much purposeful, and to that end, also in this flashback, we see something that I thought was really interesting. We see that Hodor used to not be Hodor. He used to have a name, and he could talk.
Yeah, what was his name? Willis? Something like that?
Which I will, speaking again as the book snob, I don't, as far as I recall, in the book, they at least very heavily implied that he did not, that he was sort of a simpleton from birth. So this is a departure from that, and I'm actually really excited by that. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with this and how because they wouldn't just throw that in there. There's got to be a reason, and I'm interested to see what the reason is, how he became Hodor.
Yeah, because it's probably not something as simple as like, oh, he got mule kicked. There's going to be like something bigger going on, because he's basically a stable boy. Ned and Bran Benjen? Yeah.
Benjen Stark.
They're just outside, like, playing swords and everything like kids do, practicing, and Lyanna shows up, and then you see Hodor. So it's just an interesting episode. You also get to see a much lighter-hearted Winterfell, which we haven't seen since, like, the first season.
Yeah, where that, like, everything's not awful and the Bolton's in charge, and yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so then the Three-Eyed Raven pulls Bran out of the vision, and Bran's like, what the heck, man? I was finally starting to have fun. And Three-Eyed Raven has a really interesting saying. He says, the under the sea is beautiful, but you're going to drown if you stay too long. Which is a problem that I think might come back. I think Bran is very young and probably is going to want to go back to those kinds of things. And I hope that he doesn't end up screwing himself over by staying too long.
Yeah, especially because in those visions, like, he can actually walk, he can do a lot of different things, and it's just good nostalgia for him, and I'm sure he's interested because he's seeing his father, who's in this vision is younger than he was. Right,
and he can, if what we're seeing is commonplace, he can probably go back to see his dad as he was as his dad. And that, I'm sure, would be very tempting to someone who has seen his father die, has seen all of his siblings be ripped away or die or whatever, to be able to go back to that time.
I'm trying to remember. He wasn't there at the Sceptered Baelor whenever Ned was killed, was he? That was just Arya, right?
Yeah, and, no, he Sansa was... He, I think, because of his fall, had not been able to go along.
That's a long travel for a paralyzed kid.
But still, he has these hard memories, and now that, I think it's going to be interesting to see him fight not being living in this dream world that he can conjure up for himself now.
Trying to think of anything else with that scene. Like, you see a little bit with Mira, like, outside the cave, and she's just kind of getting impatient, not wanting to wait, and she knows war is coming. Doesn't really see her role yet. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot left there. It's just kind of checking in almost.
Yeah, reminding us that she's still there, and reminding us that, Bran isn't going to just sit in the cave for the rest of the show, that he actually does have things to do. Again, it's not vital stuff, but it is important. It's just the building blocks for the future. Going forward, we are back at the Wall. Once again, Jon Snow is still dead at this point in the episode, and things are about to get hairy.
Yeah, like you're back at the scene where the new Lord Commander of the Night's Watch is pounding on the door, telling Davos and the the other Night's Watch guys that are with Jon that they're about to break the door down. Which that's a pretty damn sturdy door if it could take that many sledgehammer hits. It's better than my front door.
It was
right
an
now.
axe. But yeah, they built stuff better back then, Tony. But I did like that Davos is saying here, where he says, "I'm not much of a fighter, so I'm sorry for what you guys are about to see," which I took as either interpreting that he was just apologizing because he would be bad, or apologizing because he fights really dirty and to win. And I'm kind of sad we didn't get to see that.
I have a feeling we'll get to. Like, we've seen him in kind of bigger battles occasionally. We've seen him a little bit around, but we've never seen like kind of a smaller, focused combat. He's always been kind of on the side of those.
Yeah, he's not a warrior per se, but you can tell he's been through enough where he can definitely take care of himself.
Yeah. He's also one of the few characters that seems genuinely good that isn't dead. Even though he is a smuggler, though, so I guess on like certain aspects of things, he's not good, but he's so loyal and he's always been so good to Stannis and his friends.
Good is always a relative term, when we're talking about human beings. But I do think that he's steadfast and honest and all of those. It has a lot of good traits about him. And yeah, he's definitely somebody we can get behind. Unfortunately, we don't have to see him die this episode, because as they're breaking down the door, the wildlings come to the rescue along with the giant.
Yeah, 1-1 is back.
The door.
1-1. Like, the most regretful thing that guy ever did was firing one crossbow bolt into a giant.
Well, he didn't have to regret it for very long, Tony.
Yeah. The rest of his life, literally.
The look on his face, and the giant just kind of like, I'm annoyed with you. Splatter him against the wall. And you gotta think the wildlings could have mowed the watch down.
Yeah, because there's less than 100 Night's Watchmen at Castle Black now. And who knows how many wildlings were actually brought, because Tormund brought his force along with him and a giant. They went through the south gate, so they didn't have any defenses. They could have easily wiped out the last bit of the Night's Watch.
And I think it's telling that they didn't. I think that it's very important that they had their standoff. They're like, guys, we're here, we mean business, but we're not gonna kill people if we don't have to. Just back off.
Ollie was intent to kill someone.
Well, yeah, maybe. I think that they could have if they wanted to, and they let the guys surrender and didn't just shank him immediately.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting at least one or two more shankings in that little standoff, but they did it the right way, I think, and we'll know more soon.
And then, of course, they said the thing that nobody wants to hear, and I was like, no. When they see Jon's body, they say, we gotta burn him, because, what happens to people in the north when they die, and I was like, no, you can't burn him. You can't burn him. If you burn him, it's over.
I kind of thought that if he was Targaryen, if he was like the dragon, it might not work.
Well,
there could have been an alternative way of resurrection.
Well, we'll get to the resurrection, but next scene, we get to see King's Landing. Quick little sort of, scene of a guy boasting in a tavern. Not much to it except for we see the newly, resurrected Frankenstein thing.
Yeah, with the new mountain.
His head in.
The mountain is not into water sports. The guy's just drunk and peeing. He turns around, he pees on the mountain smashes his face between bricks.
That was such a great moment of, like, a mixture of violence and humor, because just the sound effect. You're not seeing anything. The guy's just, out peeing against the wall and turns around, and all of a sudden you hear the splatter of pee against the armor. And, it goes on for about 5 seconds, and then the mountain just picks him up and, right into the wall.
Yeah, there's some size discrepancies here. And whenever you see the mountain standing next to Cersei, you really realize how big that dude is. Like, just especially fully armored. That dude's a monster. I'm
glad they finally got him in a helmet so they can, because they've had recast the mountain 3 times now. And I was worried that they were going to have to. I was thinking, did they recast him again? But it doesn't matter because he's in a helmet. So
if they recast him, it's confused. Another guy with, the guy who's playing him right now. I think it's the same as the one who fought Oberyn, because that or they found another huge Icelandic guy with that name.
That dude's definitely huge. I'm just saying, over the course of the show, they've recast him several times, and it's nice to have him in the helmet now where And also, I'm sure...
And he's not talking, so you can recast him 6 times if you needed to.
Yeah, when he takes the helmet off, I'm sure he's not going to look normal. His eyes already, like, they're way too close together? Or is that just me? Does it feel like his face is squished?
They're very weird, like, kind of hyper-colored, and the skin is all gross looking. Like, there's a reason why they put a helmet on him. It's going to happen. I hope
it happens before the end of the season. But we see Cersei, she kind of wants to go to the funeral of Myrcella. There's a standoff, this great moment of tension between the Kingsguard and, again, Franken Mountain, where she's like, I really want to go. And they're like, the king said not to. And I don't know exactly who the guy is in charge of the guard, but you can kind of feel his... I'm going to do my job here, but man, I really hope you don't push it, lady. I would rather not do this today.
That's like, what are the chances of my 12 men taking out him? Like, I think we could do it, but we're going to lose more than we're going to win.
Yeah, and he's right there in the front, so he's not going to be okay if that happens.
Yeah, and all the mountain has to do is reach for his sword, and they're all flinching back.
Fortunately, she's not quite stupid enough to be like, I'm just going to wade through with my one dude, because she knows that's going to cause way too many problems. So she goes back, and then we see Tommen and Jaime in the Sept with Myrcella's body. And Tommen is really kind of... I like where he's going right now.
Yeah, I thought that he's sounding really reasonable, and he's trying to get better as a king. It's not like Joffrey, where he was completely insane. It's not like some of these other people where, like, they could be really bad kings if they had the throne. Like, he's trying the best he can for being a kid, really.
Well, yeah, but he's also... It seems like the natural progression for him to say, I screwed up. Like, my mom got paraded through the streets of Westeros naked, and I did nothing. And he was kind of a little wuss. And everybody said, man, what a little wuss, previous season. And now you hear him say, yeah, I'm kind of a little wuss. That sort of sucks. I need to not do that anymore. And I love that. I love that he's self-aware enough to see that in himself and want to change.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if he's going to go full bore the other direction, become like Tommen the Tyrant. He goes and he hugs his mom, and he's like, I'm weak, and I need your help.
Well, before he goes and hugs his mom, we have a great scene between Jaime and the High Sparrow.
Yeah, that was really tense.
And, man, that character is so good because he never steps out of the realm where you can buy that he's legitimately, like, he believes in what he's saying, and yet he's still an incredible power threat to all of these people, and he knows it. He says up front, we can win, guys.
We can overthrow the Emperor, like, but we're also a bunch of poor people with nobody's name, or with names no one will remember. Like, it's just this really subtle power that they wield, and it's getting stronger by the day.
I heard... In the past, I've heard some interesting theories about Game of Thrones and the politics of... how do I put this? The idea that the power is starting to come from the people in Game of Thrones, that we're seeing sort of a shift in their political system, and how it's kind of mirroring the idea of more populism, where, the wild...
with leaders like these, why would you need enemies?
Well, you have the wildlings coming to power. You have the Wall, where all these criminals are coming. Like, these guys are playing a huge important part. You have the sort of the Dothraki and the poor and the downtrodden Marine.
The freed slaves.
Right. All of these things are huge important parts of this plot of the aristocracy versus the people, and neither one of them is necessarily right. I don't think this kingdom is a better kingdom with the High Sparrow in charge, but it's not necessarily a worse kingdom either.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at, and like just even seeing Jaime kind of revealing some of his theological beliefs was also interesting in this scene.
Well, like, and just the High Sparrow... Sorry, go ahead.
Just seeing him break down like how willing he is to just strike down the High Sparrow in that moment. If there wasn't maybe 30 other people in there, he might have done it.
He might still have done it if he thought he would gain something, but I think he believes what the High Sparrow is saying, that just killing one man probably won't make that big of a difference. And also maybe he doesn't want to die that day.
Yeah.
But we finish out the stuff in King's Landing with Tommen and Cersei, where, as you mentioned, Tommen goes to Cersei and he's like, Mom, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I've been ashamed of myself. And she kind of just... It's hard to tell what's going on in her head. She's a lot colder towards him than she, I think, would have been in the past.
Well, Marjorie kind of put up so many walls, and he kept her at an arm's length all of last season, and then whenever she was finally taken, both of those girls were taken. That's whenever Cersei started being a lot colder to him.
Well, I think also she has it in her head, what we saw last episode, where she says, my kids are going to die. They're all going to die. And I think she's looking at him thinking... There was a moment where I was like, man, what if she, tries to kill him to take power? And then I instantly thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Cersei would never kill one of her kids. But she does, I think, see him as being dead already. And
could definitely see that with how she was acting. Like she's in mourning for her daughter, but she's almost in mourning for her entire family at this point.
Yeah, and she feels like it's kind of her fault, and she doesn't want to let him in. She's afraid to kind of open up her heart, even though he's sort of becoming the king that she wanted him to be. She pushed him towards this, and he's like, here I am, I'm ready to be that guy. And she's like, okay, that's good, I forgive you.
And we'll see if she ends up healing with this, if she ends up getting more protective, or if it's all just gone. It's going to be really interesting seeing where Cersei goes this season.
Moving forward, we get Meereen with Tyrion and the other council members talking about the dragons. Tyrion knows about dragons, as we've seen a little bit before in the show, where he's kind of a dragon fanboy.
Yeah, he's you even hear him whenever he's in the dragon chamber telling a story about whenever he was a kid and how much he just wanted a dragon so badly.
Well, in the previous season, too, when that dragon flew over, the look on his face was like, Drogon specifically, but he was like, oh my gosh, that's a real dragon. There are dragons in the world.
These dragons look really good, especially in the dark.
Yeah, that's good. They are pretty legit. And so Tyrion says, listen, you can't keep these dragons chained up. They're not animals, which I thought was a really interesting... He's the only person who knows this. He's the only person who's coming up saying these are intelligent creatures, maybe more intelligent than we are. You can't just lock them up and expect that things are going to go well. And
yeah, you can't go full SeaWorld with it.
And yeah, right after his big sort of like, we need to let these guys out, you see him walking into the dragon chamber, and he's very clearly like, he's still a dwarf and they're still dragons, and they could incinerate him in about half a second.
I almost wonder if that worked to his advantage, because he's just a little more insignificant. You get some guy in full armor trying to charge in and just take the chains off the dragons, they might not react as well. Well, but he's sitting there and he's talking to them and working slowly towards them, and as soon as one of the links are off, they know exactly what's going on. The other dragon comes over and wants him to release the other.
Yeah, I was curious. He was talking to them saying, I'm your friend, don't burn your friend. And I was thinking, you could say that, but do they understand you? Like, as smart as they might be, they've been down here not talking to people or having people talk to them. Did they learn enough in their, supposed intelligence, even as intelligent as they might be? Did they learn enough to be able to say, oh, yeah, it's cool?
I think it would be more that they can distinguish between what's a threat and what isn't.
Well, he's very much not a threat. And I love that eunuch guy, his name I've forgotten all of a sudden, Varys stayed behind. He's like, this is your bag, dude. You go in there if that's what you think you want to do. I'm going to stay way back here.
And Tyrion's words as they were leaving, like, if I have an idea like that again, I want you to punch me in the face.
I really, really want to see that come back. I want to see at some point him say something and I'll just like, BAM!
Yeah,
right
just
a
good backhand or something from Varys. Just a solid punch. He's never stricken any... Actually, he has killed somebody on screen before. I remember seeing that. Whenever he got the witch.
Varys will get his hands dirty. He's not... I think he likes to stay above it all, but he's more into the nitty-gritty than he wants to let on.
Yeah, it's all part of the persona. Let him kind of be in the background a little bit more in people's minds. He's never going to be the Robert type where he dons armor and brings a sword, but he'll do some things if he has to.
Yeah, he'll poison you. I think that Varys would. He has no honor, but he will definitely do what it takes to be. Moving on to Aria in whatever the name of the city she's in. Bravos, right?
Yep, I'm pretty sure she's still in Bravos.
Yeah, because the Faceless Men are still there, and we forgot to mention her little scene from last week, and it wasn't a huge important scene last week, but I did like that they set it up previous because it kind of gave us a good sense that this isn't just, despite the fact that we only see it happen twice, it's probably not just happening 2 times, Tony. It seems like this is probably something that's gone on for a while. She's probably out on the streets for weeks, if not months, begging.
Yeah, I definitely got that impression as well. She's she's stricken blind, living in this alley, and then pretty much daily, girl comes up and just starts battering her with a stick.
Have you heard? This is again possibly spoilery speculation, but have you heard the theory about who some of the Faceless Men are?
I have not.
There is, again, I don't want to ruin anybody's experience at this. You know what? I'm just gonna not. I'll let this one slide.
I'll just let me know, and I'll cut it out if I need to.
Okay. The theory goes, Tony, that her former dancing master was one of the Faceless. And the people have pointed out that the way that the girl twirls the swords when she comes up to her is the same way that I think his name was Sirio twirled the swords in sort of his dancing lessons when he was teaching her. And he talks a lot about the god of death. He says, what do we say to the god of death? Not today. Well, the Faceless Men serve the god of death. That is their religion is towards the god of death. And the fact that he references the god of death when nobody else in the world does.
Well, we haven't seen anyone else from Bravos really talk much. I kind of wonder if that's just kind of a more fighting style over there. Like you see how the Dothraki fight, it's always on horseback with those giant crescent swords and arrows. Like maybe the people of Bravos fight in a lot lighter fashion with I think they called it water dancing or something for the style of fighting.
Well, and it could just be them. It's possible that, hey, that just is a cool way to wave some sticks around, and so they did it that way twice.
Yeah. Although I have suspected that you were right as far as the many-faced god or just the people that are doing the training there. I thought that Silvio, I believe that's his name, I think you're right, I could have easily been one of them. And they could have had their eye on them for that long. It could be why all of a sudden that guy's in the cart with them going to, what castle? Harrenhal, was it that she was imprisoned at?
Yes.
They could have been following her this whole time. So, that she just could be marked by them.
Well, right, and it also doesn't, if he is truly faceless, then saying that is Sirio, or, that is, their whole deal is that you aren't anyone. So the person could take off, a man could take off his face and reveal the dancing instructor's face, but still not really 100% for sure be him, because you can put on anybody's face you want to.
Yeah, and that's been big on the posters and everything this year too. I'm not sure if that's just because of the motif they're going for, or if it's going to be even more significant because everybody's going to die. Who knows?
But he does, so Jorgen Heckengard, I think, comes to her after the girl, quote-unquote, leaves, possibly changes faces, and says, hey, what's your name? If you tell me your name, you can come and, stay back at the place. And she's like, I have no name. If you tell me your name, I'll give you some food. I have no name. And then he says, if you tell me your name, I'll give you back your eyesight. And she has to think about that one for a second before she's like, I got no name, bud. And then he lets her come back to the house of, what is it called? House of the Many-Faced God?
Yeah, I believe so. If not, it's something with the Many-Faced God.
I feel
of the Many-Faced God,
every time I talk about Game of Thrones, and I don't feel like I ought to feel stupid.
There's
8,000 things to... I know, only 8,000, Tony. That's ridiculous. There's so many things to remember. And the people who really know it are probably mad at us, so I feel bad.
Oh. Send us a tweet at HE Podcast and let us know what things are actually called, and we'll try to improve for next episode.
Speaking of improving, that's not what Ramsay's doing in this episode.
Well, he's improving his position.
That's true. He's not improving as a human being, though. He's his dad tells him not to be a wild dog. Like, the final... I think he screwed himself over. I mean, okay, so we're in the recap. He kills his dad, right? We started off talking about that.
Stabby, stab, stab.
And just... Why, Ramsay? I know...
It seems like he played his hand too early there. But then again, his heir has been born that day. Or Roose Bolton's heir has been born.
Do you think... I mean, okay, so Roose does have some points. He had that great, like, you know, we sent 15 of our best men after them and they didn't come back. And he's like, well, I think they were helped. He's like, no, really? I thought Sansa killed all those dudes. No freaking way. She had help. Okay. He doesn't say it quite like that, but that's sort of how I interpreted it. But he's getting hard on Ramsay. He's giving him a hard time, and I think that Ramsay, you say maybe he played his hand a little bit too soon. I wonder if, well, right before he kills him, Roose tells him, "You'll always be my firstborn." But there's a part of me that thinks Roose knows that Ramsay's a loose cannon, and he will get rid of him if he needs to. And I think Ramsay's probably pulling the trigger on his dad before his dad can pull the trigger on him.
Yeah, it is true. Especially now that he has an heir and everything.
Yeah.
And there has to be some stuff going on in the background that we don't know about, because the Karstarks, who, if you go back to Robert's War, like they end up having, or Robb Stark's War, not Robert's, Baratheons. You go back and you see that they beheaded the head of the Karstark family, which was one of the biggest ones in the north, so they're aligned with the Boltons now. And he's just in the room, and he seems just fine with what's going on. So it obviously was a planned attack by Ramsay. He didn't just choose that moment.
Yeah, or he has more of their loyalty. I think maybe the Karstarks know that Ramsay's dumb enough to go after Jon Snow, possibly, and they would rather have that happen.
Yeah, just weaken them that way. Have the flayed men waste all their time going after the Night's Watch while they wait to take over.
That's a thought. I was not going that direction myself. I was just thinking maybe they wanted all of the Starks dead, even though Jon Snow isn't a Stark directly. But still, you're probably right. I mean, if the Karstarks want to take over in the north, they definitely benefit from having a complete loose... Well,
he used the line, like, there needs to be new strong blood in the north. So, like, that seems like he's trying to position his family to be the new wardens of the north over the Boltons.
You make a good point. I think they're really rolling the dice with Ramsay, and Ramsay could do something... He's a wild dog, right? He's not smart, but he is dangerous. And he could do something that would end up putting them in power, or he could do something that ultimately would hurt them pretty badly. And that's a chance, man. You're taking a big chance with that guy.
I would not be gambling with Ramsay. Just seems like a good way to get your wiener cut off.
Speaking of getting your wiener cut off and skipping over, the baby gets killed. That's just disgusting.
Yeah, like Walda Frey, like she's just given birth, and like he's like, call for her. Tells the Meister to go get her, and she's just outside, and you can tell she's just like run ragged and everything, but she's happy for her little boy. Then he leads her to the dogs, and he does exactly what he intends to, and that was like, as soon as those gates were closed, it was like, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible. I don't really want to get into the details of it. I'm glad they didn't show anything.
I'm glad they didn't even play like a baby screaming. Like, if there had been a baby screaming, that would have been too much for me. I would have been like, I gotta take a 5-minute break or something.
Yeah, and this is from guys that like literally run a podcast that's done some pretty legit horror over the years. Like, there are some things that still claw at us, like, get through, and that's one of them. Like,
killing
especially
babies.
Because Walda did not deserve that in any way. She was just like the chubby Frey that like got picked up by the Boltons. Like, she was an innocent in all this, especially the son too. So
yeah, it's anyway. Moving on to Theon being weird again. So Sansa and Brienne are kind of off, doing their thing. Theon's all skittery and stuff, and the upshot of this scene is just that he's like, yeah, I'm leaving. And I didn't quite, maybe I'm dense, Tony. I didn't really understand what his reasoning here was.
That
he just doesn't want to face
Castle
Jon
Black,
again?
If he goes to Castle Black, they're going to kill him. Like,
Is
for
he
the murders of everybody else, like, he raised Winterfell.
No, I understand. He deserves to be killed. I love how far they've gone to turn him from just someone who's absolutely despicable to someone who you can kind of be on his side. But he even says, look, I was willing to die for you anyway. So is he just saving his own skin here? Is that all there is to it?
He's tired. Like, he never got to be in Pike. Like, he was taken when he was a child. That's why this episode is called Home. He's going home. And he really hasn't had that chance in his life.
Interesting. So you think that the home title is all around him? Because I thought, I mean, yeah, he does say he's going back to Pike, but there's a part of me is like, there's no way he's going to make it all the way back there.
I think it's for him specifically because, like, whenever they're, like, Sansa and him are embracing, she's like, where are you going to go? And, like, the only word he says is home. So I think, like, it might fit to some other people in the episode, but I feel like it was more for him, and that's also what brings us over to the Greyjoys.
Yes.
And lets us see what's happening in Pike.
Where we see Balin and Yara, and they're getting news that things are not going their way on the mainland. I love the design of the Pike, by the way. This castle it's between this and the Eyrie are the coolest, like, locations. Even though they're sort of ancillary locations, right? Like, nothing giant important has happened at the Eyrie. I mean, important things have happened, but, like, politically speaking, the Erie's kind of ancillary, and the Pike is sort of ancillary as well. But they are just gorgeous with the Eyrie being so high up and the Pike being this like reclaimed from the ocean, these castles built on the top of these, like, rock spires just in the middle of nowhere in the sea. Awesome stuff.
Yeah. And, like, that, even the interiors and everything, it feels the most Lord of the Rings out of anything that we've seen so far. Or maybe it's just because Balin Greyjoy was in Lord of the Rings. It could be that too.
Well, it really does. In the books, they talk about just how much it kind of sucks there. Like, it's cold and it's wet and, like, they don't have much.
They definitely put the emphasis on that this time. Like, there is nothing nice about living in those spires. It's just
like,
cold.
What are you the king of? You have to live in this castle and be king of these people who sail in ships, and that's basically it. They're hard people because they have to be. And we get a little bit of a recap of, you know, sort of just conversationally between Balin and Yara. Balin's like, War of the Five Kings, I'm the last king left, y'all. And Yara talks about seeing her brothers die, or losing her brothers before, and how that she had gone off after Theon, and that didn't work out. And you sort of get a really as well done as you can do overview in conversation. This was well done.
Yeah. And then, like, the dynamic changes immediately when he walks out the door. Which,
again, you get that sense that, I mean, before we get into just what happens, just this place sucks. Like, going from one room to another involves stepping out onto a rickety rope bridge in the middle of gale force wind and rain. You gotta love that.
And, like, they talk about that a little bit. Like, they must not be that bothered by it because they brave storms all the time, and this is just what they're used to, but it still looks like it just sucks.
Yeah, but Balin is going across this bridge, and he sees somebody, sort of on the bridge across from him. He says, step aside for your king or whatever. And it turns out that it's his brother, who we believe, having done a little bit of research from the books and IMDb, is named Aeron Greyjoy, Aeron.
There's also a chance that it is Euron, who is Euron.
Euron, they might have combined those two characters, because in the books, Euron Greyjoy is sort of a weird half-resurrected priest of the drowned god. And Aeron definitely or whoever this guy is definitely seems to be saying, hey, I am the drowned god. I represent him. So it could be kind of a combination of both things. It seems like he's closer in age to what Aeron would be from the books, but they may have just combined those two characters.
It's also a little bit hard to tell with the lighting and everything how old he is.
He seems he doesn't seem old and bedraggled like the king. I mean, his beard is less gray. It's cut closer.
Yeah,
he
looks
a bit
stronger
younger.
And younger too, like probably like mid-30s type.
He's not leaning against the sides of the like railing either, which I thought was telling. At first I thought like, man, this guy's just really tough, and then I realized also probably because if he's been on ships his whole life, he's really used to sort of the rocking and swaying of what a ship would be in the storm. So this is pretty natural for him.
Yeah, the balance has got to be on point.
That was a great little detail where they showed him sort of standing straight and Balin kind of losing his balance and hanging on to things a little bit because Balin hasn't been out at sea as much, at least from what we've been told.
It feels like some of the detail work in this season is a little bit like they're on top of it a little bit more. Just the little flourishes of the things, the way the backgrounds look, everything is just kind of perfectly plotted out so far. Like, I really haven't had a problem with some of this stuff, whereas in other season premieres and the other early episodes, it's kind of like, this is dragging, what's going on? I, like, look at my watch, I'm like, crap, there's only 10 minutes left.
Yes. And so, to make a long story short, Aaron kills Balin, throws him off the thing. Nobody knows who did it. And from what I can tell, so they show, right after that, they show the funeral with Yara there kind of seeing her dad off. He hasn't shown himself to anybody else. He's not there at the funeral, right?
No,
Aaron?
He was not. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up like for the moot or whatever and claims that like, do you want to go with a woman who's like the rightful heir, or do you want to go with the brother? And like, you got to wonder how in Greyjoy society how that would go. Like, you would think it would probably go to the brother before it would go to a woman, but they also know a lot more about Yara, so it'll be interesting to see how the politics play out with that coming up.
Well, this is one of the few things left that did sort of happen in the book, at least partially, that hasn't happened in the show yet. They've kind of messed around with the timeline a little bit, and I don't have a problem with that.
Didn't Balin die like while Catelyn Stark was still alive?
I think so, but again, it doesn't matter that much to how things are playing out. Like, he hasn't affected the plot much, so waiting to show this now and really bringing the Ironborn back into this way, I think really is effective storytelling. And I also wonder if whoever the younger brother is, in the way the book played out, the brother who was the priest recused himself from being part of the moot because he says, no, I'm a priest. Like, you can't be clergy and king at the same time. So I don't know if they're going to go that way, but we do for sure know that Yara is going to make a play to be the first queen, the Queen's Moot, as she calls it, of the Ironborn.
And we'll see if the show matches the books and everything with this coming up next week, probably, or in the next couple weeks.
I think it'll play out for a little bit with them. I don't know for sure. I do know that they teased us out for the Jon Snow thing.
Yeah, they brought us right to the very end for this.
I thought this scene was brilliant because even though or you really, you have, your heavy suspicions. If you put all the pieces together, you're like, well, we've seen people come back from the dead. She's seen it. She's here. It's still, they drag it out in such a beautiful way. And Davos has to come to her and be like, before we burn this guy, are you sure you can't do something for him? And she's like, no, I've lost all my faith. And she's like, he says, are you sure? And kind of points out to her like, listen, I ain't no man of faith, but dag nab, I've seen you do some pretty incredible stuff. And she's like, well, yeah, but the Lord of Light, maybe he's left me, and the stuff I saw, which, as it seems stupid for her to say, I saw Jon Snow fighting in Winterfell. No, I can't resurrect him from the dead, because he's not. It's like, lady, do you hear yourself? But that's, crises of faith don't necessarily make logical sense. But, he talks to her and he says, listen, I don't care about the gods. You've got 8,000 gods. You got the 7 gods. You've got, the drowned god. You've got the gods in a tree. You've got the Lord of Light. Just do your thing.
Yeah.
The old gods are the tree gods. Those are the...
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't hear you say tree gods, so I was just rolling.
Yes. Well, he says tree gods, and those are the old ones. And she kind of says, you know what? It's really great, her attitude here. She's just like, I'll say the words. I'll do the stuff that I know to do. I shouldn't be able to do this. But then again, the guy who I saw do it before shouldn't have been able to do it. So whatever. Get off my back, old man. And they just drew it out, Tony. Just the tension in this scene.
Well, she like she redid the words like 5 or 6 times before like Tormund and everybody else just walked out of the room like just sad and disappointed.
Well, she just like takes forever washing him off. She washes all the blood off. You're like, come on, I know what's gonna happen. And then she says the words. They said them again. And you're like, come on, I know what's gonna happen. When's he gonna open his eyes? And then like she leaves, and then the next person leaves, and then they're like alone in the room. And I was like, come on, they can't burn Jon Snow. You can't make me wait until next episode. And then Wolf looks up, and I was like, oh, dude, it is on. He just looked up.
He's like, oh, owner's back. I like it.
Oh, it was beautiful and perfect, and even if I saw it coming, it was still amazing.
That's
I think they played with the fact that we saw it coming. They were like, yeah, we know that you see this coming, and we're going to absolutely run it as far as we can.
Yeah, it was like some Hitchcock-level tension, just waiting.
Oh, beautiful. This is only episode 2. I mean, we've got Jon Snow back. We're killing off like big key political players. We've got things falling into place.
This episode was directed by Jeremy Podeswa. So props to you for doing this. If you were the one that actually did the Iceland stuff, I know that they've got so many different crews that it's kind of hard to tell who actually directed an episode of TV.
Well, especially with this. Sometimes. I mean, I'm sure in an episode of Once Upon a Time, they're like in those 3 locations. They're probably the one director. But it is interesting to I never thought about the logistics of how a director gets assigned to an episode. Like, all right, well, that's cool. I don't know. That's a really interesting question, Tony. I have no idea. Now I'm curious about that, and I'm less wowed by Jon Snow. I want to know how they figure out who directs what.
Yeah, that's the inside baseball stuff that's got to be a lot of fun for HBO to figure out. My sister has all the Blu-rays, so I might have to pop in and see if there's any details on that and any making-of stuff that would be really cool to check out.
Maybe they have a making-of podcast. That'd be great. There's a Better Call Saul making-of podcast.
They have their new After the Thrones thing that comes out on Monday if you have HBO Go.
Yeah, but I don't want to watch TV. I want to... when I want to hear about a TV show, I want to hear people talk about it, Tony. That's why I'm on a recap. I'm not on TV.
I'm sure somewhere
because my face
David,
isn't pretty enough.
I'm sure DB Weiss and David Benoff have been on a podcast somewhere talking a little bit about this.
But yeah, this is great. Do you want to do predictions going forward? Do you want to say what? Because that's something I thought maybe we should have done that last week and we didn't. But this, have recap. Where do you think we're going? What do you think we're going to see going forward in the season?
I think by episode 5, you're going to have Aria get her sight back. Like, I think she's still going to have to earn it. The question is she really going to forget that she's a Stark, or is that the point where she walks away from the many-faced god? Like, her entire life is centered around revenge, and the many-faced god, like, seems like the right outlet for that, but the many-faced god isn't targeted to her needs. It's targeted to, like, people with the tokens of Bravos and everything. Like the Valar Morghulis... I can't pronounce it right now. But, like, it would be doing their work instead of doing her work. So it's really hard to tell if she's going to stay with them or if she's just going to take the skills from them.
Well, I'm not 100% sure she's going to regain her eyesight. I think she can become a killer who's also blind.
It would be cool.
I mean, that's sort of, that's one of those tropes that has existed in fiction for millennia practically. I mean, it starts with Japan that's a constantly recurring idea of the blind swordsman, and for it to be a blind swordswoman would be just I think that would really work well, but I don't know for sure. All right,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I feel for sure that Ramsay, he's gotta die.
Yeah, he's not gonna make it to season 7.
I hope he doesn't make it. He sure doesn't make it through. And I also feel this is also more long term. I think that we're going to see Tyrion ride a dragon.
Yeah, I actually put that on my notes tonight. I was like, Tyrion needs to ride a dragon. They did all that stuff back in season 2 or so whenever they actually showed him making a saddle for Brandon Stark. Like, they showed him making all sorts of other stuff that would kind of hint that it's possible. And if we want to see him ever as like a true warrior, he's going to need a little bit more than just his axe.
That's a really brilliant thought, Tony. The idea that he can make those saddles and like he could do it.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Like, I think he would have to get some help getting on and off. Like, I think that would literally be something he is incapable of without, like, the dragons helping or without somebody helping him. But I think they could make the saddle, and they've made precedents for it that it's out there, so he can ride. He knows how to ride. Of course, a horse is a lot different than a dragon, but I think it's going to happen.
Well, they also said Bran was gonna. He asked the guy if he would ever walk again. The guy says no, but you'll fly.
So, like, you're saying that Bran could end up on a dragon, too.
I thought that's what you were talking... I thought for sure you were like... I was made a mistake and said Bran. Well, you were saying he couldn't get on the... Of course, he's just short, Tony. If Tyrion could get on the dragon...
I'm saying by himself, it would be really hard just because he's not proportioned.
He could get a step stool or something. Yeah. I don't know. In my head, you would start talking about Bran, and I was like, man, I must have said Bran like an idiot, but now you're making some really good points. And he does say that about Bran.
Well,
so
he could also end up
Tyrion and Bran both end up on dragons.
He could also end up just being like warg to crows and things like that too. So we'll see how that turns out.
I think he ends up flying. I don't think he like flies like Superman, but I think he gets on a dragon at some point, Tony. He's not going to stay there. They talk about the wars coming. I bet at some point Bran ends up on a dragon too. That's my other prediction. I made it without meaning to make it, but now I'm making it for real. That's where I'm going.
You think Tommen's going to last the season?
I don't know.
I think just for convenience sake, I think he's going to make it to season 7. He'll be like the last standing Lannister king.
Well, we haven't even seen him come back yet. So, I mean, we know he's in this season. I won't have any idea how long he's going to last until I see what kind of role he's playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
wait, no, not Tom. Okay. It's getting too late for me, Tony. I'm thinking of Bran's brother. What's the one who we haven't seen? Tommen the King probably doesn't last the season. No.
All right, so you think they're going to clear up that. And then you've got Rickard Stark. I believe it's Rickon.
I feel like an idiot. This show just makes me sound so stupid, Tony. Rickon, yes, I thought you were talking about him. I have no idea. He is coming back this season, though. We did see him come like in a preview for the show, I believe.
Which probably means Asha's coming back, which is cool because I've always liked her character.
Well, we'll see. We should probably stop talking before we sound any dumber than we already have.
And Thank you guys. If you guys want to send your predictions at HE Podcast or our Facebook page, look for Human Echoes Podcast, go ahead and toss that out there or into the YouTube comments. We don't have a video for this because we basically don't want to spend extra hours clipping back and forth because we're not in the same room. But yeah, like how we've got it available on YouTube.
Thank you guys for listening so much. If you are on the audio side of the podcast, subscribe to us on iTunes or in the new Android
Google Play Music.
Google Play Music is the name of the thing that I can think of, and all the other names also, which is really cool.
Podcast Addict, all of the other dozens there. So if you guys have the chance, go ahead and subscribe. You'll also get our normal podcast. It's all on the same channel. Thank you so much for listening. Go to humanechoes.com for more content. Check out becoming a member. We've got a lot of cool stuff for you there. And I hope to see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye.